Hi, and welcome to this video series. This is the very first video in this quick start series for Waveform. I'm using version 9. This should apply to version 9 or higher. I'm going to go over the things you need to do to get started from the very basics. We're going to build on that in this series of videos. The very first thing you need to do is go to the Traction website. This is assuming you don't already have it installed. Under Products, if you click on Waveform, you'll get the Waveform product page. If you haven't yet purchased Waveform, you can download the free trial here. The installation and the other things are very similar. You will need to create an account with a password in order to get access to the free trial. So the next step is to go to your account, which is on the Traction website. Go to Account, My Account, and Downloads. This will ask you to, once it gets to this page, it'll ask you to log in. So I'm going to log in. And then it will show you your downloadable products. Now in there, you'll have your Traction Waveform downloads. In this particular case, it's showing version 8. I have the version 9 beta here because we haven't quite launched yet. When you see this, you can just download for the appropriate kind of computer. In my case, I'm using the Mac version, which I will for the rest of this series, but I will explain where it differs from the Windows versions as we go along. Once you've done that, you'll run that installer like you would for any other program. And that's all you need to know here. Now, when you first come into Waveform, it will ask you for your username and password. This is the same one you used at the Traction website. And that will load your license. You can find additional information at the Traction website if you're using an offline computer on how to handle that. Every time you run Waveform, it will automatically check for updates. You can also do that manually, but it will look something like this. If I go to Help, check for updates, you'll get the available updates, the virtual instruments that are part of your package, additional content, as well as the program itself. You can download them. Sometimes they'll go to your downloads folder and you need to run them, and other times that'll be handled automatically. But generally, you're going to want to do this the first time. Make sure you go through and install all of the various instruments and content so that you'll have something to work with as you go through the rest of the series. Now also, the very first time you run Waveform, you'll see what's called the first run setup, which is this panel on the Projects tab or on the Settings tab. You'll see it over here. It's a list of things to do. The first one is Install Traction. The second one is Audio Device Setup, which I will show you in just a minute. And then all of these other things. Some of these I'm going to cover in this video. Some we're going to save for future videos. Now, if you close this, you might feel like, oh, I've lost it. So now how do I get it back? Well, you get it back by going to the Projects tab, not the Settings tab, but on the Projects tab, down here in the lower left, Help menu, and then you'll see here, Show First Run Setup, and that turns it back on. Also, as you go through, you'll get pop-up help as you point to different things. This is kind of a useful aid, as you're going through. You'll see these little things like that will pop up and give you a little assistance. If you're just exploring the program, you might want to leave that on. Most of the time, after a few minutes, you're going to want to turn that off. You do that also under Help. Help, turn off, pop-up help, right there. Now, the very next thing we need to do is Audio Device Setup. So if we go through the first run, you'll see that it says Set up Audio Devices. If you click that, it will take you directly to the Settings tab and the Audio Devices page. If you're doing that manually, you just click on Settings, Audio Devices, and then you get the various settings. Now I'm on Mac OS, so you choose your output device right here. By clicking, you can choose between available things that are connected. I have an external USB audio interface from Yamaha called an AG06. That's what I'm using for this example. So I just select that here. And you can choose output and input as separate devices. I strongly recommend when you're getting started to just make these the same device. It's a 2-in, 2-output, so you'll see your available outputs here and your available inputs following that. You'll also see that I've got input metering going on here showing me that it is receiving, so that's giving me an indication. there's a test button here, which I'm going to click, and you'll hear a tone. And that means playback is ready to go for this device. Now, it's just slightly different if you're on Windows. Now, this is a screenshot from my Windows system. For audio device type, I strongly suggest you use ASIO. With ASIO and an external audio interface, you would need to download those drivers and install them from the manufacturer of the hardware, which is a pretty simple thing to do. That'll give you the best performance for most computers. I also recommend that you use Windows 10, which is the best optimized 64-bit operating system for Windows at this point. If you're using the internal sound, then you could choose the Windows audio driver for the audio device type. That's the built-in audio. That will also give you very good performance. There are other choices which I don't recommend. I just recommend you use Windows Audio or else use ASIO. If you use Windows Audio, you can choose separately the output and the input. I suggest you leave those two the same. The same thing, you'll be able to click test. You'll also be able to see if you've got input working here. Now you can also choose the sample rate and the audio buffer size. I suggest that you use 44,100, which is 44.1 kilohertz. Set your audio buffer size to 256 as a good starting point. You can set it lower for less latency. You can set it higher if you need a little more time for your computer to think while you're mixing down. You'll also have these choices. Now, if you're using ASIO, you can't set it directly in the program. You can click this control panel button, and then it'll load the manufacturer's driver panel, and you could choose from one of these sample rates. Let's go back to the Mac version. Now, in the Mac version, you have the same thing. You can choose from all of these sample rates, and I suggest for the demos using 44.1. You could choose an audio buffer size. I think a good starting point is 256. Now, there's a lot of audio buffer sizes available here. If you have a very fast interface and a fast computer, you can go down to 16 samples, which gives you very low latency. So how do you choose from all of these things? Well, I'm going to suggest that you choose from the 8 most common sample rates when you're trying this out. Those are the ones that people over the years have tested the most. And I just suggest, unless you've got a reason to choose what I would call in-between sample rates like 288, use the common ones, 16, and then the multiples going up from there, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, or 2048. Those will give you the best results and also the best way to troubleshoot if you have any problems. If you start messing with this and you want to reset, then you can click this to reset the settings, turn these on, click, and that will reset things back to the default. You can see that 512 apparently is the default, but I'm going to put that back to 256. So that was audio device setup. We've got that checked off. We can set up a MIDI device, which we need to do before doing MIDI recording in virtual instruments. I'm not going to do that right now, but we're going to scan for plugins because we need plugins to play back the demo songs. So I'm going to click Scan for Plugins, and you'll see it takes you right here to scanning and sorting. I've got no plugins in my list. These are the effects and virtual instruments that we're going to use. On the Mac, we can choose audio units, VST or VST3. You're going to want to scan for all of these one by one. When you're on PC, you'll see VST or VST3, and you'll have both of those choices you want to scan for. Now, before you do that, check this option right here. It says Plugin Scanning Options. You can have it scan with a single process or do multiple simultaneous scans. I'm going to suggest that if your computer is set up to do 8 scans or 10 scans simultaneously, just put that back to 1 before you run this. You'll have the least problems. I'm going to click Scanning and Sorting. Scan for new updated audio units plugins. You'll see it goes through the list. These are the various things that are installed with Waveform or else were included on my computer, or I already had a few of these things installed. I'm going to go ahead now and do the VST plugins, which does the same process. So it takes a few seconds. Now, if you have hundreds or thousands of plugins, this will take a while. And if you have problems where you've got a plugin that just doesn't load and it hangs for a long time, then just cancel it and rerun it again. And if you have a problem plugin, it'll skip it. If you have a problem with something hanging or not loading or scanning properly, make sure you update it to the latest version. If that doesn't work, then report the problem to Traction so that they can work to resolve that issue. I'm going to now scan for VST3 plugins. So there's the scan for VST3 plugins. I get a lot of the same ones. Now I'm finished scanning all my plugins. I can move on to the next step, and that is to load the demo songs. So when I click Download Demo Songs, it highlights Get Demo Songs. So I click this, which gives me this user interface showing me the available demo songs. I just click all of these. You also have the option to choose where to put it. So I have it in Volumes, Music, Traction. Volumes means I have a separate hard drive called Music. If you're using a single computer, you probably want to create a Traction folder or a Waveform folder under your documents, and then you can download your demo songs to there. So I'm going to click Download. And then up here is the download progress. So if I click up here in the upper left corner, as the songs are finished, you'll see that they'll appear here on the Projects tab in the Active Projects list. So I've got TM Demo, Subways, 2 bits, and it's still downloading with a little bit to go. The one that I want to load is TM Demo Track. So if I click that, then you'll see here is what's called the edit. This is the project, which is really a folder that can hold one or more edits. And the edit is essentially the song. Then double click the edit to open it. And the edit will open in its own tab. So now you can choose between the Settings tab, the Projects tab, and your edit. If you opened other edits, then they would appear as tabs as well. Now with the demo song open, we can play it. Just go to the transport area and click the green play button. Excellent. That's really all we need to do to verify that we're ready to go on to the next step. If you wanted to open other demo songs, you can do that as well. Now, if you don't see the controls panel area looking exactly like mine here, it can be closed to a compact toolbar using this button right here. If you're in that mode, then the play button for the transport appears in the middle, but it otherwise works the same. You can do play and stop also with the space bar. So if I hit the space bar, and hit the space bar again to stop playback. Now Waveform comes with a very detailed user guide that covers everything that I've talked about here, and you can find it by clicking Help and going to Show Full User Guide. And you'll find much more detail on the points I've covered here in Chapter 2, Installing Waveform, Chapter 3, Installing the Demo Projects, and Chapter 4, that's all about the audio device setup. So please refer to that if you want to get into greater depth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.